Hello and welcome to Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, in the park in London, in spring. It's not very warm, but it is still spring. Defiantly though, I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops, and I'm going to do that all the way until October. That's my plan. Today's podcast is with a man that I know very well actually. It's Marek Doyle, my personal functional medicine practitioner. He's helped me a lot and seems to be very in demand, almost too much in demand, as you'll hear. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of tell you how he's helped me first before you listen to Marek, because the reason I think this podcast is important is because sometimes it's good to have a little bit of help. And I don't mean going to your doctor, because your doctor is absolutely working with the best of intentions, but has only got 5 or 10 minutes to spend with you. But when you work with a practitioner like Marek, he'll spend an hour or an hour and a half with you, and I'll get you to do some tests and have a look at it, and he'll say, okay, well maybe you could make a few tweaks in your diet here and take XYZ supplement, and you'll go from feeling 95% good to 100% good. Working for me with Marek over the last year or so, well, I've reduced my body fat, I've reduced inflammation, I've increased methylation, I've got a way better gut, and I'm basically feeling pretty awesome. So all of those things have improved with Marek. And for that reason, I think it's been good. Sometimes I leave Marek's office and I'm like, I'm not sure if I should be doing that. But the proof is in the pudding and I'm feeling good. So as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for me. So if you're looking at piecing it all together and you haven't currently got a practitioner, and I don't think many people listening to this podcast do, maybe it's time for someone who will look at the kind of the whole, be a little bit more holistic about everything going on in your life. Also, on this podcast, towards the end, the one test you can take which might provide more insight into your current health issues or your current health optimization than any other. The one test, what is it? You'll find out a little bit later on with Marek Doyle. Kind of get into all this because you've got this kind of burgeoning Harley Street practice, and I know for a fact that you're kind of, much of the time you're trying to not expand because you've got so many clients already. Was there something in your health that encouraged you to investigate this area, or is it just a kind of a general passion?
So it was absolutely my experience in 2007. So this is in the early stages. And at this point, I guess I am a everyday nutritionist, doing some personal training alongside that. So I always did this bit of both in the early stages. I'm mainly working with athletes, so the occasional Olympic hopeful, the occasional world champion, but mainly the weekend warriors. That's where I'm at. I'm dealing with a lot of fat loss. I'm pretty happy with my lot. At the same time, I'm setting up that business, and turns out in natural healthcare you don't get paid that much if nobody knows you exist. So handling a few financial stresses, not necessarily in the most relaxed environment, waking up at 6:30, training until 10:30, all the stuff I recommend for people not to do. And I was also training for Muay Thai fights at the time, so you'd be delighted to know that I won. In actual fact, if I fight again in the next year, I'll be 14 years undefeated. But there's been a few years off, but that training was really intense.
Well, it is, isn't it? Elbows are not allowed in this country, are they?
So they are if it is full Thai rules. Obviously I was fighting at amateur standards, which was called category D. So yeah, you're not allowed to elbow at that category. And then of course, as you step up to full professional level, then everything's on the table apart from the elbows. And then of course you've got the full Thai rules as well. So
and if anyone ever wants to get rid of a muffin top or a little roll around the middle, because it's all kind of it's moving the abs from side to side, isn't it? It's like doing a whole load of side sit-ups all the time. Yeah,
although I think I can see where you're going with that, and I'm going to call you out on that, because when it comes to dealing with the muffin top, that's all about fat.
Right.
no matter how hard you train those muscles,
Yeah.
it's not going to affect the fat in front, which is why you can see these huge bodybuilder guys who, they've got huge muscular mass, but normally got some chub around
A little bit of chub.
the abs. Whereas you've got underfed 15-year-old boys, they're ripped.
Right.
I mean, they're also looking thoroughly undernourished and not necessarily the look we're going for. But it's all to do with the lack of fat.
Okay.
So I think it's martial arts obviously huge benefit. If that's what.
And how did that contribute to this? What happened?
So I was training hard, and I mean it was one of the hardest training sessions I'd actually ever had, and consequently my sparring session didn't go the way I had planned. I took quite a beating, including getting a real solid kick on the ear. You can probably actually see that this ear is not the same as that one.
Yeah. So wow. God, that was a big kick.
It was a big kick. So it didn't drop me. I did have a little bit of stars, and that was fine. But the next morning, I woke up and my ear felt really funny, kind of itchy. So I went to scratch it, but it turned out that I was scratching it from quite some inches away from my head because it was just a huge ball of fluid. Not only that, from that day, I was just not in the game. And I remember doing a personal training session, and I picked up this 10 kilogram weight, and I thought, I'm going to use two hands for this. And that was when I thought,
severe concussion.
No, it was more a case of the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's interesting. I mean, I was basically patient zero. I then had to try to navigate the NHS system to find out exactly what was wrong with me. I could still work, I could still get up, but my sleep was awful. I had no energy. I was constantly tired but wired and shaky, and it was just really not a good place. So it took several months to work out exactly what was up, and stumbled upon the adrenal stress index test, and suddenly took the action indicated, and I felt almost back to normal overnight, and then over the couple of months that followed.
Wow.
And that suddenly brought me back in. But that experience was obviously a huge gift, because in the months, I guess the years that followed, but in the months afterwards, I was suddenly spotting symptoms that I had, and thought, well, why don't you take this adrenal stress index test, see what happens? And suddenly, people who hadn't slept for 20 years suddenly started sleeping all the way through the night. People who couldn't lose weight no matter what, they'd been on these expensive retreats, X, Y, and Z, they'd been on the boot camps in Thailand on juice fasts and all that, no matter what they did, it wasn't working. Suddenly they were now getting results, and that was the start of it all. Because if somebody has been struggling with their health or struggling with their weight for so long, when they suddenly get this dramatic shift, everyone in their life asks them, how did this happen? And suddenly really nice. The phone calls started coming in. I want you to do what you did for my cousin. Or brilliant. I work in an office with thingy. Please sort me out as well. And then it just spiraled out of control. I never realised how similar that was to my story.
Because I obviously got ill a few years ago in the jungle, had this virus, and like you, I'm so glad it happened now. But what it was it wasn't actually the virus. It was just tipping me over the edge of a massively over-adrenalised, I don't even know if that's a word, but
it is a word now.
An overstimulated lifestyle. And even now I have to work really hard at chilling out.
Well, I think you're not the only one there. And I think actually it is obviously this city that's trying to kill us day by day. And it is interesting with hindsight to look back on it. I look at my schedule, I look at the stress that I took on, and the ridiculous idea. I was like, no, stress doesn't really affect me. Whereas it's much more accurate to say, I bury stress really effectively.
Yeah.
Years later, going through processes like TRE, tension release exercises, Reichian therapy, to find out how much physical stress was held in my body. Really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
And,
So the adrenal stuff is interesting. And obviously I've been a client of yours for about a year or so, and that was something that is that what I took something similar, didn't I?
You did, yes. So you would have, off the top of my head, you would have taken it.
Yes, and was that
very unusual that I wouldn't have recommended that in the first couple of months.
Because obviously we looked at some hormonal stuff, and one of the things that worried me a bit was the fact that cortisol was high in the evening and low in the morning. Well, I mean, I kind of thought, well, I'm often working at Sky. Last night I was working till midnight at Sky in a bright studio. It's like midday in there, not midnight. Then I'm driving home and it's all bright, and I get into bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not really even ready to go to sleep, but I'm trying. It's hardly surprising that the cortisol is high. But that's something, is that kind of what part of the whole adrenal puzzle?
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I try never to use this word adrenal fatigue, because of course adrenal fatigue is a word that I think serves a very valuable purpose. It was a throwaway line by that guy Dr. Wilson in the early 90s, and it's really stuck. And I think that it's criticised for good reason, because there is almost this concept that adrenal fatigue equals your adrenals are not producing enough cortisol. But it doesn't take into account the other patterns that we see at the adrenals that can have just as negative an impact on someone's health. So, as you say, what if your rhythm is disturbed and your cortisol starts pumping out at night? That's going to mean you have insufficient cortisol to meet the demands in the morning. You're sluggish, you're off pace.
Yeah.
You just don't
probably a lot of people listening who are thinking, that's me.
Well, of course, and and then suddenly they're struggling to get going, and then at the end of the day, they get a second wind, come back to life.
Yeah.
But now it's time to go to bed. And that is a really, really common problem. Sometimes we'll just see huge oversecretion of cortisol all day.
Really? Higher than I had.
Oh, much higher. Yeah,
that makes me feel good. Well, someone's worse than me.
Your cortisol was a fairly normal, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Fairly normal output overall. It was the times of the day that were disturbed.
You want it in the morning.
Yeah. We want it to be a decent output in the morning to spike our daily rhythm, our diurnal rhythm. That then gets us going, and then we want it to gradually drop over the course of the day. But there are some people who are flatlining. They have very little cortisol. So cortisol, so important to coordinate our sleep-wake cycles, to nourish our central nervous system, to control inflammation, to influence the thyroid, the digestive tract, the immune system. Apart from that, it doesn't do anything. But,
and if someone's listening to that and thinking, yeah, maybe my cortisol might be a bit high in the evening, a bit low in the morning, without necessarily seeing a practitioner, is there something they can do, or is this really something that has to be in the hands of an experienced person?
I think that when it comes down to the adrenals, we're dealing with hormones. I would spend that 75 quid, get an adrenal stress index test done. In theory, that shouldn't be too much of a challenge for your average nutritional therapist. Well, in theory.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that being said, there are some very common mistakes that I see. And individuals often... I mean, adrenals is a great example of an area where dogma rules. And people email me with, what's good for adrenal fatigue? And my answer to them is always the same. Well, if you can tell me what your cortisol levels are doing, what your DHEA levels are doing, and what your pregnenolone levels are doing, I can tell you what's going to be suitable. But it is obviously more than just a test. There are plenty of occasions when people show signs of low cortisol, and yet their cortisol output looks pretty decent. These are situations where the the body is demanding super mega hyper levels of cortisol, and it's getting high. That's not enough to satisfy our requirements, even though on a test it shows it's high. But I digress. Do we think that it can be self-navigated? I've never seen that work out well.
Right.
If there's a dream issue, get a
practitioner.
test done and see a practitioner, because it's the quickest and cheapest way.
That's
Muddling
what I say to
around for
people
2
quite a
years
lot.
is expensive.
Yeah. And I must say, it's quite interesting, because if you go to your doctor, they're probably not going to encourage you to take this test, because they've got more important things to worry about and more serious cases to look at, and they've only got 5 or 10 minutes to spend with you.
And it's depending on what day you ask me, I'll have a different viewpoint on how we feel about the way doctors handle, especially adrenal issues, because on one hand they do have an average of 5 minutes and 16 seconds per individual, which I'm not so sure what can be done there. But at the same time, there is always more that can be done. When friends of mine, so that's sometimes my best exposure to the real world and how medicine is working, they tell me about their experiences. They go to the doctor after a bereavement and they get offered antidepressants. They're not sad because of a deficiency of citalopram.
They're sad because something terrible has happened and they need to connect with that sadness.
Exactly. Or sometimes they may well not have been sleeping long. Maybe they're sleeping 3 hours a night and living on coffee. That happens. So, if that's the case, it wouldn't be at all unreasonable for the doctor to say, are you actually sleeping at the moment? Maybe it's not depression. Maybe it's just being achingly, crushingly, devastatingly tired, because it turns out that this person in front of them is a human and humans need sleep. But when it comes to the adrenals, yes, it is a problem, mainly that doctors get 4 hours of adrenal training. So do they remember that 4 hours that they got 17 years back? Probably not. Are they themselves tired, underslept? Are they suffering from adrenal issues themselves? Most likely.
It's not doctor bashing, is it? I'm very grateful for Western medicine, but perhaps look, when I had these energy issues, I was prescribed antidepressants, and it wasn't because I was depressed. He said, there's an antidepressant that hasn't been on the main market for a while, but it really helps with energy. I was like, okay. Took half the recommended dose the first night and slept for 16 hours, woke up, felt groggy, went back to bed. Took quarter the recommended dose the next night and felt just as bad, and thankfully put it down after that. And I know antidepressants have a place, but...
it is interesting. Some people do respond to them, although I'm never likely to see those people, because by definition, if you get a good response to that, are you going to seek out the employment of a nutritional therapist? You're probably not. You probably stop then because you're all fixed. I only
Is that how you would describe yourself, nutritional therapist or functional medicine practitioner? Or
well, I think nutritional therapist is the word on the insurance document that I have, so I guess we'll stick with that, although no word's ever truly going to describe it. I think sometimes the public see nutritional therapists as, eat low fat, low salt, 5 a day, plenty of whole grains.
I don't think it doesn't quite encapsulate your attention to detail. But people will get that from listening to this.
Well, maybe on my business cards it should say nutritional therapist with specific focus on brain health and the hormonal health. I think that could be a little bit more accurate, but I don't have business cards.
So that's something that probably should be navigated with a practitioner. What are some of the things that you think people can do or take or change without necessarily seeing someone? They might be thinking, do you know what, I'm feeling pretty good, it'd be great to have an extra 5 or 10% energy or focus or whatever it might be. Is there anything that springs to mind that's a bit of a game changer or something that's really easy to implement?
The one thing that I can always faithfully recommend is magnesium. And the interesting thing about magnesium is how short so many people are. The more stressed you are, the more you're going to deplete. That's not new news. And also that seems to be the one mineral that has lost out most in the modern day processing and the gas ripening, having grown them on conventionally intensively farmed fields that have been littered with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. It has a consequence, and it seems that across the board between the surveys done in 1941 and 2008 there has been a loss, but magnesium was the glaring loss. So magnesium is useful for so many things. 325 different enzymes depend on this ongoing supply of magnesium, but most people will notice it in hydration, the ability to hold fluids in their cells instead of their bladder, so they're not urinating all the time. Muscular tension, so that stiff neck, stiff shoulders, muscular twitching, especially when the eyelid starts going.
I get that occasionally.
Yeah, that's a sign of severe magnesium shortage. Yeah, and of course the biggest one of all, sleep. And it just...
How do you recommend people take it?
I would suggest, easiest way, good magnesium supplements before bed. So not the magnesium oxide from your
some of them make me get low quite a lot.
So that could be the magnesium citrate. So there are some people who are sensitive to magnesium citrate.
Yeah.
The way it triggers these issues is that if it's not absorbed quickly, then magnesium has an osmotic effect. Now, of course, we all remember osmosis from year 9 chemistry. It's
not really. I think you might have. I was paying very little attention in year 9 chemistry, unfortunately. By the way, I was paying very little attention in pretty much every class ever.
And look at you now.
Well, I'm sure there was something to do with a nutritional imbalance, as well as probably just the fact that those lessons weren't geared towards
me. To be fair, I actually wish I listened more, because I had to learn so much more science later on. I thought I actually probably could
you could have
actually learned that for free.
So remind me, osmosis.
So osmosis is where you have ions.
Yeah.
So the particular form of metal which draws fluids into certain compartments. And that's the mechanism through which magnesium allows the fluids to actually go into the cells. Although actually it's more through moving potassium and sodium where they need to be, so that they directly draw in the fluids into your cells. That's great. But yes, if there's lots of magnesium sitting in your intestines, it will osmotically draw fluids there. And guess what happens next? So that's why a lot of people find that if they take a large dose of magnesium, that it can induce diarrhea. It isn't that common.
I find it with every single magnesium, a little bit. Even magnesium
all
chloride.
Forms of magnesium can have that. Magnesium citrate is particularly notorious for doing that. So in those situations, using something like magnesium glycinate seems to be helpful. But there's always other alternatives. So magnesium baths using the Epsom salts, or magnesium chloride.
The spray.
Yeah, the spray, the magnesium chloride spray works really well. And if you haven't got a bathtub or foot bath, you can get the little portable ones for £8.
Yeah.
And that'll do a great job. So there's plenty of ways to get the magnesium in. But that is the one thing that seems to make a difference. And I always remember speaking to a friend's wife many years back, and she explained how since giving birth she just couldn't sleep properly. So I said, well, just take some magnesium. And next time I saw her a few months later, I asked her, how's the magnesium going? She said, I haven't done that. I said, look, it will change your life. And saw her again a few months later, pretty much same scenario. 2 years later, she took some magnesium and sent me a text message to say, oh my God, this has changed my life.
Really?
Why didn't you tell me this was going to change my life? And I reminded her, that was my specific words, this will change your life.
Yeah.
And horse to water.
Because it's one of those things, I think, you and I, you've encouraged me to take all kinds of supplements. There's one more that I want to mention in a sec, but magnesium, it's almost like you kind of get used to it, and it's like, magnesium, whatever, But actually, you can forget just how good it is. So there's good reminder.
Well, and it is an interesting one. I mean, it's the one item that, if ever there are doubters, well, if it was going to do all that, surely the doctor would have mentioned it, right?
Yeah.
In those situations, so okay, take your magnesium, then we'll see what you think. And of course, there's no item that deals with the 100% of the problems 100% of the time. That's always going to be the highest hit rate.
Yeah.
Difficult to beat magnesium.
Well, I'm gonna take some when you go tonight.
Well, I'll be taking some as I do every night and have done for the last 12 years.
The other supplement that I've really enjoyed, and there's been lots that have worked for me that you've recommended, is a supplement that I was telling you earlier that me and my girlfriend were in Thailand in January. We played a lot of chess. Brilliant. Love chess. And most of the time, but not all the time, I was winning, which I was obviously annoyingly gloating about. But I joked with Faith that I had this supplement called my chess supplement because whenever I took it, I'd beat her at chess, and whenever I didn't take it, I would lose. And it did seem to make me slightly sharper. And this is called Alpha GPC. I've loved that one. Explain a bit more how that's working.
Okay, so Alpha GPC is a particular form of choline. The reason why alpha GPC is a preferred form of choline is because...
What's choline?
So choline, it's often described as an honorary member of the B vitamin family. And it does have quite a few roles in the body. It can help move fats through the liver, which not only can help detoxify fat-soluble agents, but also improve the flow of bile. It's a component of cell membranes, which is so important. People always underestimate the impact of membrane health, but your mitochondria are membrane-based organisms.
So it's helping, it's almost like improving the connections of the membrane, moving stuff around.
Well, yes, suddenly they're able to do their job, and the membranes are obviously tasked with quite a lot. So to use the mitochondria as an example, we'll try not to delve too much into jargon and polysyllabism. But the way that we actually store energy within the mitochondria for use is by exchanging electrons. Let's not worry about exactly how that happens, but they're exchanged across the membrane and then held on the opposite side of a membrane. They're desperate to come back in because that is the magnetic forces acting upon them. But the membrane integrity ensures that they do not.
Right.
Unless they find a channel, an ATP channel. It's like a turnstile which spins that turnstile and produces ATP as a consequence.
Okay.
The take home from that is that if you do not have good membrane integrity,
which alpha GPC can help you with,
exactly,
then you won't be retaining all the good stuff in yourself.
Then most of the potential energy that you've got is just going to diffuse back into the main compartment of the mitochondria. It cannot now spin that turnstile. It's not held on the opposite side of that membrane.
Which basically means that it helps you play chess better.
Wow, it's interesting. so that's another further benefit of choline. So yes, we mentioned the cleaning of the liver and the production of bile. We mentioned the mitochondrial benefits. Another hugely important thing at the membranes is that's where most steroid hormone conversion happens. The enzymes are active at the membranes. Equally, those membranes are important for cellular detoxification. But here's the chess benefit. You've got lots of neurotransmitters in your brain. Loads. Over 150 have been identified. But the smart neurotransmitter, as it's often called, is acetyl-L-choline.
Right.
As the name might suggest, this is based on choline. So if you are low on choline, which is very, very common with methylation issues, because that's where most of the choline in your body comes from, through methylation. Not through the diet. The diet should top it up. Methylation is what should actually top up, generate the bulk of the stores. So if you are low on choline, then we can expect to see a substantial improvement in the cholinergic activity in your brain.
So by that you mean feeling sharper, thinking better, remembering
being able to remember
more.
Names, numbers, details, the small stuff that makes a big difference. And we would expect that to be so much more active now that we're nourishing more choline there. That being said, choline on its own doesn't normally do the job even when you're short, because choline itself is not the neurotransmitter, it's acetyl-L-choline. You are also taking acetyl-L-carnitine, and the two together is where you have sufficient acetyl groups to scoop up that incoming choline and form better acetyl-L-choline levels.
So
and I do see a difference in people who are taking both together in terms of them reporting the sharpness, their increased ability to think. And of course, choline isn't just used for memory and these little nuances. It's also cholinergic signals connect between brain and gut.
Yeah.
So people who are constipated often notice an improvement from that. They produce more saliva, so on and so forth. So there's quite a lot of benefits.
So the alpha GPC and the acetyl-L-carnitine are the chest supplements. What is
that's what we're going to call them from now on.
You are the man responsible for making me keto when I really didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I do recall the conversations that we had. I'm glad that you did it, though.
Do you remember I sent you a message and I was like, is there any way of doing this not keto? And you said, yeah, it's fine. You can eat a lot of butternut squash.
Well, yeah, unfortunately. So we were obviously aiming for an avoidance of lectins.
Yeah.
Which is a real difficult thing to do because they're in almost everything, all nuts, all seeds, all grains, all legumes, nightshades. So it's entirely feasible to maintain suitable fuel for the brain on a carbohydrate-based version.
Yeah.
But you've got to eat butternut squash swede or make those low lectin
Swede.
crackers.
There's a lot of swede in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So ketogenic does tend to make that a whole lot easier. Plus, then there's the other benefits of the improved fueling to the brain. If there is a low oxygen delivery, inflammation can play a big role in that. Adrenal issues can contribute to that, anemia. So there's a number of reasons why people might feel sharper for ketones being their primary fuel.
But in general, the old high-fat, lowish sugar diet seemed to suit me an absolute treat.
It is interesting once people have adapted. Yeah. Because it obviously depends on how people feel about food. Yeah. And without generalising, it is a case of men tend to really like the ketogenic diet because it solves the problem of having to eat. It's simple, it's easy, and it's super flexible. You can go longer times without feeling hangry and still maintaining good mental clarity. But if, on the other hand, you really enjoy food and that's a ritual, then it can be a little bit samey. It can be a little bit one-dimensional.
Well, I think even that, it's basically the way I describe it to people is you get all the delicious stuff and none of the filler.
Well, no, I agree. I often will do cyclical ketogenic. Yeah. So there'll be some days when I'm fully ketogenic. That may well last 4 or 5 days. And then come the weekend, probably won't be. Sports and weddings, social occasions of that type, that's where it's just going to be very, very easy to disembark, eat a decent share of carbs.
But you get used to it, don't you? And then you can have a load of carbs and the next day you're right back in it.
Well, that is actually one of the benefits. So a lot of people struggle with the transition into ketosis. My population, as it were, may well not be representative of the world at large, purely because
we're all a bit more hardcore.
Well, yeah, if someone's queuing up and paying their money, doing their test to come and see me, then they're probably not feeling great. There's probably some metabolic issues lurking within them. So there are definitely some people who will not be able to make that transition. And the key thing we put that down to is their leptin sensitivity. So leptin is the hormone that is released from the fat cells, constantly communicating with the brain to say, hey, we're okay. We've got plenty of fuel. Do your thing. And that allows the brain to release energy for neurotransmitter production, for repairing joints, producing hormones, investing in digestion, all of the stuff that requires a lot of energy, but doesn't actually keep us alive today. Yeah. And there's one other thing that it does. It allows the brain to trigger the release of fat. And that is, of course, a huge issue, because if your fat stores are locked up, the fat isn't going to arrive through the bloodstream to the liver. If the liver doesn't get the fat that it's depending on to produce ketones.
And how do you unlock it?
That's when, and of course, resetting leptin sensitivity.
Right.
What's the best way to do that? Ketogenic diet.
Right.
So that's normally where I would tend to use.
I feel like I've banged on about it a lot. This ketogenic diet on the podcast, but it is interesting, isn't it? And I think a lot of people that have come on do some version of at least a high fat diet.
Well, yeah, they do, and I think one of the problems with that is that there's very few fair conversations about ketosis, mainly because there's one group of people who are aficionados and are able to recount their own experiences of feeling clearer, sharper, resolving digestive issues, better sleep, no longer hangry, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of people out there, and so people will talk about, well, this is obviously a better way to eat. And then on the other hand, there's plenty of individuals who say, this is terribly stressful on the adrenals. When I tried keto, my hair fell out. All I got was carb cravings. And I think that it's worthwhile addressing both sides of that. I don't see keto as a better way to eat, but for a lot of people that I work with, it's more appropriate. Yeah. So if their energy systems have been compromised in any way, ketosis done successfully is one of the only ways I can guarantee that they're going to get a good fuel supply to their brain.
And this podcast is all about energy, so that's great, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's fascinating to see how many people, once they reach their... suddenly the emails stop, and what I get instead is a real nice summary of what they've been doing, why they've been able to do it, the amount of weight they lost, the differences in their skin, their sleep. And part of that, I'm sure, is to do with the fact that these ketones are now fueling their brain in a way that carbohydrates were not able to do. And as I said, those are the individuals that see a difference because of oxygen delivery issues, because glucose needs that oxygen delivery to perform effectively. So we do get those huge benefits from the ketone delivery, but also in the early stages of working with people, it's more about what we don't eat than what we do eat. So oxalates, lectins, so many people have issues with these two food chemicals because their digestive system is so messed up. And we can solve that, but you do need a bit of a holiday to begin with. And so being able to give people a diet that nourishes them, or as I would say, feeds them without inflaming them, that's the cornerstone towards actually turning the tide and getting a good result. Because if you're not feeding them without inflaming them, you're not going to succeed, ever.
What is one book that you'd recommend then, and one tip for more energy, vitality and motivation? So obviously this is something that I ask everyone. One book that you recommend and one tip.
So one book I would recommend, I read so many books on nutrition and I'm not sure everybody else would enjoy what I read. It may well be just a little bit too dry. So I'm just going to say read Shantaram, because you'll enjoy it. Book. And that will totally take away your fear of getting to the post office and being in a queue, because now you'll look forward to those queues, get out the Kindle and hope that queue takes a little bit longer.
I'm so pleased you recommended that, because I sometimes think, I love books on nutrition or self-development or whatever it is, but just for relaxing fiction, you can't beat it. And that is one of the best fiction books I've ever read.
I think it's got to be way up there. And I think you touched on such an important point, which is my best pal Martin does actually. The best thing he ever did for his self-growth was to give up self-growth. to give up self-improvement. And there's so much in that.
But still listen to Zestology at the same time. For a little bit of growth. Just 40 minutes of growth a week, and then that's fine.
It's all about balance. Yeah. Everything in moderation, including moderation.
And then what about the tip?
So this is one tip to have more energy.
More energy, more vitality, a more motivated life.
I guess it's a bit predictable, but take an organic acid test and see a nutritional therapist who knows how to use that data.
That's a really good one.
I think so.
And the organic acid test, that's the adrenal
test? So an organic acid test, it's a urinary test. Single urinary sample upon waking. It takes about 3 weeks to get the results back, and it will normally run you the best part of £200. And that will come back with 73 markers on neurotransmitters, detoxification, antioxidant production, various B vitamin status, vitamin C. It will also look at, is there any signs of dysbiosis? It will look at mitochondrial function. And no test is perfect. There's still going to be plenty of questions, but what a perfect start, so that unlike everyone else out there, you're not guessing. You got the data to know where you need to proceed and where your obstacles are.
Marek, thank you for doing this. Where can people find out? I know you're struggling under the weight of clients, but I'm sure you'd like to direct people to your work anyway. Where can people find out more about you?
So I can be found at www.marekdoyle.com. And there is a little bit of a waiting list for incoming clients, but for those who are committed, I'm sure it'll be worth it. Also for practitioners who want to learn how to interpret the organic acids test and various other functional testing procedures and learn more about the way I do things, I have an academy where I teach other practitioners to get the results that they want. So that's pretty much what I've learned from the last 12 years and 9,000 test results. And that can be found on my website as well. All the details for the academy are on there.
That's it. Thanks, Marek. And thank you for listening to Zestology. Remember, the Zestology book club is out there, and the 3 Zesty Things email, which goes out every Monday. You can sign up to that at tonywrighton.com. And just to say, if you are interested in anything more to do with functional health and getting a practitioner and all that, a little bit of Googling. Let me know if you need any help with it, and I hope it works out for you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.